Hi guys, so I wanted to have a video up like a week and a half ago, but Emily syndrome happened, so you're getting a video today instead. I still made it, still April, so I still made it. I guess I should explain what Emily syndrome means, seeing as how it's in the, title of my channel, and I've never really explained it. About 4 or 5 years ago, when I started developing just constant health junk, one thing after the other, I made a joke that I have my own syndrome called Emily syndrome because I don't know anybody else. I'm sure there's somebody out there in 7.5 billion people, but I've never met, I don't know of anyone who's quite like me with the same group of diagnoses, with all these different things going on all at one time. So I made a joke that I have my own syndrome. It's causing me to have all these problems. So I just thought I should explain that title, and I'll tell you what's happened as well, just to keep you in the loop, because this is about my life with these challenges. So about a week and a half ago, when I was going to be doing this video, I couldn't talk because I talked last time about flare-ups of yeast or fungus that I get in my mouth, and I had a flare-up in March, but it seemed to have gone away, but it hadn't really. It plateaued, got better, and then it flared up again. So I had another phone appointment with my doctor, and she prescribed me some different medication. It seems to have helped, but I think once the plague is over, I'm going to pursue this yeast business with her further. I've wanted to ask for a while. It was diagnosed at a walk-in clinic and never really explored. And it's just that there's always been something more pressing every time I go to the doctor, that it's sort of stayed on the back burner. I actually have a list of things, a handful of things anyway, that I'd love to ask her about that just haven't, like my sinuses and my runny noses, and it's just on the back burner. But those smaller problems become background noise when I'm having horrible depression or I'm constantly exhausted, or, things that actually impair my life become more pressing. So now that the yeast has become so much more pressing, it's actually going to get some attention once the plague is over. And I'm also going to update you, since I'm on this vein of doctor's appointments. I was this close to seeing an endocrinologist. You might remember that 5-month-long saga. I finally got referred to one by my family doctor. And I actually, the day after I saw her, 2 days after, I got a phone call from the clinic. And I've never experienced this. Most organized doctor ever. The phone call said, "We have received your referral, and you will be contacted in 5 to 10 business days with an appointment date," and then everything got shut down. I actually made it by a hair. I think I mentioned before, I made it by a hair with my surgery. So once the plague is over, I'm assuming I'll get an appointment, and if I ever get an answer on this mitochondrial thing, you guys will know. So I'll pivot into today's topic. So this video is, I'm looking at notes, if you see me staring off to one side. Is in a similar vein to the last video where I gave tips on staying at home. This is going to be tips on coping with anxiety. And this felt like a timely thing because the rest of the world, like, this is like welcome to my world when everyone talks about living with the pandemic. Everyone else is getting to experience never leaving the house, not getting enough money from the government, constant anxiety. So I figure, since I have some experience in this world, I might as well share some of my knowledge while other people are going through this. So hopefully I can help somebody. So, yes, okay. So a couple of notes. This video, when I originally had plans for an anxiety video, it was different. I was supposed to be doing a CBT group therapy. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. That group was not meant to be. The first session in late February got canceled because of a snowstorm. The second session actually happened, but it was introductory. Confidentiality and what is CBT. So I might as well have stayed in bed for all I learned. The third one I missed because of my surgery, and then it got canceled because of the plague. So my idea of coming here and saying, here's some great CBT techniques, that's going to have to happen down the road, but I still wanted to do an anxiety video, even though the group didn't happen. because I still learned things over the years living with anxiety. The other thing about this video, so it's not professional tips, it's my tips. And the other thing is, this is more for, I have generalized anxiety disorder and OCD. OCD is technically in a new category anyway. It's technically not an anxiety disorder. I will discuss that when I do an OCD video. But the difference is, and why that's relevant to this video, is that the fears in OCD can be quite irrational. And often it's all coming from inside your head. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to tell you is more dealing with external, which is more what generalized anxiety is. To give you an example, it's normal to be worried about climate change. It's not normal to be so worried you're crying and can't get out of bed for 3 days. That's a problem. So that's generalized anxiety. It's like exaggerated level of normal worry, whereas OCD can be really bizarre. I read in a book of a man whose OCD obsession was injuring his nose, and he had all kinds of rituals around protecting his nose. So that's a whole other kettle of fish. That's not everyday worry. So I think, okay. So the first tip I'm going to give you, it sounds self-explanatory, and it kind of is, but it's also kind of nuanced. Avoidance. So at the best of times, I carefully control news media and social media, what I'm taking in. Never read the comments. It's a great way to trigger basically any mental disorder. And then avoiding subjects I know are going to trigger me. And it sounds easy, but the temptation is there. I've turned off on my phone notifications for all social media and news apps. For the first couple weeks after Ontario went into a state of emergency, I totally avoided news and social media. Now I've let some in, but highly controlled, even a lot less time than I was doing before, and even before I had it quite controlled. I'm using the pandemic as an example, but if a certain subject triggers you, avoid it. I know turning off notifications is probably the best technique, because if you get a notification saying so-and-so tweeted something, you want to click on it. It's just human nature. You want to see what it says, and then you end up in a rabbit hole of dumbness, stupidity on Twitter. So turning off the notifications, not following pages of things that are going to trigger you. The limit to avoidance, though, let's say you got into a car accident, and now you're afraid of cars. You need to have different therapy than what stuff I'm talking about here. Because the stuff I'm talking about avoiding isn't going to impact or impair your day-to-day life. Not going on Facebook is not going to cost you your employment. So if you need to avoid something that's, constantly around, and avoiding it's going to destroy, wreck your life, then this is not the technique. You need a different type of therapy, or go live up a mountain where there are no cars. That's what it boils down to. In a similar vein, I'm using that word a lot, similar vein to avoidance, is walking away. And I'm going to give you an example. And again, you can't do this at work. You can't say to your boss, this triggered me and I got anxious, so I walked away. An example I'm going to give you is the other day when I was trying to fix my wireless printer. I thought it was going to be easy, and I started getting into, I'm not very good at repairing tech things, and I started getting into things I didn't understand, and my anxiety took over. I went, oh my god, I'm never going to fix it. I'm never going to be able to print anything ever again. I wasted money on this printer. And I started getting really triggered, even though rationally, I'm not in school, I'm not working, I have nothing that needs printing right now. Normally I could go to the library if I really need to print something. Right now I can't, but it's a non-issue because I don't really urgently need to print anything. But my mind went there anyway. So I have the thing with the walking away. See, it sounds straightforward. It sounds like I'm saying I got anxious about the printer, so I walked away. But you have to have, I would say, good insight and self-awareness for this technique. I have this ability. I'm not entirely sure where this came from. The self-talk, probably from my mom. She does a lot of that. But the other thing, where I separate myself from my brain and say my brain is being silly, my brain is anxious. I don't know where that ability came from. I almost think it might be The Simpsons, because sometimes they show characters having conversations with their own brain. I wish I could tell you how to develop this technique, because I feel like you kind of need it to utilize the walking away, to be able to go, okay, Emily, this is getting silly, to be able to have that logical voice come to the top and say, Emily, this is silly. You don't need to print anything right now. It's not essential that you fix this right now, so if it's upsetting you, walk away. I'm sure there are techniques out there for when there's something you can't walk away from, that you have to face head on. And when I know that, I will share it with you. I haven't done a professional group yet. Another technique I like to utilize mindfulness. Mindfulness is basically, in one sentence, living in the present. I'll talk about that in a future video. I think it's very useful. I did a group. Um, what I do, the way I utilize it, I've sort of adapted it for myself. So, and this is one thing that does work with internal triggers, when my brain just decides to bring something up, and I'm able to stop myself. I'll ground myself. I'll close my eyes, take a deep breath, and I'll focus on what's happening directly now. Right now, what I'm feeling, hearing, smelling in my direct environment, and you put all your energy into focusing on that, and not what already happened or what might happen. It takes practice. It sounds easy, but it's extremely not easy. Good English, Emily. It can be challenging. You need to practice, but you'll be surprised how well it works, because you can't be anxious when you're in the moment. When you're just factually describing what's going on around you, describe your emotions, but just accept. Don't judge. Don't tell yourself this is bad or stupid. Just accept that's how you're feeling. And it's a good technique. You can't close your eyes while driving or walking down the street, but you can still utilize, even if it's just a 30-second. And again, this is my modified mindfulness. If you take a course, they'll want you to do a lot more than just what I'm describing, but this is how I use it. I've even done it on the bus, because everyone on the buses have to sleep anyway. No one can tell when my eyes are closed. So I find that very good for grounding myself when my brain's bringing up random stuff. And it's how I remind myself, here's what's happening now, here's what matters. Distraction, that is pretty self-explanatory. You know what I mean when I tell you to distract yourself. The one thing I'm going to tell you, but whatever you choose to distract yourself has to get you into what's called a state of flow, which is a psychological term, actually, if you want to look it up. So for me, it's either reading or a video game, because the state of flow is that feeling of you get sucked into something and you can't believe 2 hours just went by. So the thing has to be not too easy, because you'll get bored and distracted from your task, but it also can't frustrate you, because then your emotions will build up and pull you out of the moment. So find something that keeps you interested at the right level. Like I said, for me, that's books or video games are usually the ones, because you can't read a book with your mind wandering. All your attention has to be on those words. So that's actually something to consider in choosing your distraction activity. How much of your brain, how much of your focus and attention are going to the activity, because then you can't think about anxiety if you're focused on your activity. And the last set, yeah, okay. Great when you can't read your own notes. The last set of tips, sorry. I'm clumping a bunch of stuff together under planning. So I have written here chunking, scheduling, organizing, and anticipating as different things you can do to plan ahead to help mitigate anxiety. So chunking is a technique I use. I think I actually learned about it possibly under another name. I think I may have taken that name from something else totally different. But I learned it as a way to teach someone with intellectual disability a new task. You're breaking down the task into as many steps as they need and teaching them one step at a time. But this can be used in so many other ways. And when it comes to anxiety, anxious people get overwhelmed easily. We see a big task, and oh my God, I can't do this. It's common for people with a lot of anxiety. So if you need to clean your basement, for example, don't write clean basement on your to-do list because it'll never happen. Go down there, make some notes of what needs to be done, and then make yourself a list of how you're going to do it. Break it down as much as you need to. If you need to just focus on one box and ignore the rest of the basement, then do that. And make yourself a list. Maybe your instructions are to take everything out of the box, see where everything in that box should go, and then check it off on the list. You did it. You did a part of your task, and you'll feel much better. It feels much more manageable. And the next day, worry about the next box. So that's chunking, which is a type of planning. I consider it a type of planning in this context. Organizing. So organize yourself ahead of time. If you're anxious about something, this can help reassure you that everything's going fine. So I did this yesterday. I was doing an online social group with other people with Asperger's, and I hadn't done this before. I hadn't been to that particular website before. So I sat down about 10 minutes, more than 10 minutes, before it was due to start, and I made sure, everything was where I wanted it. I made sure the computer was working properly. So exactly as the word organizing implies, I got myself organized ahead of time. Because if I didn't, and something went wrong, then I'd be a ball of anxiety because I'm missing my group. So by getting things as much as you can ahead of time, you can prevent and alleviate anxiety. Sometimes technology is going to fail, and you can't do anything about that. Excuse me. But you can do as much as you can. Control the things you can control ahead of time. You can't control other people. Important thing to remember. Which would all actually, yeah, that's a good segue into scheduling. This is good for unknowns or uncertain situations. If you're doing something that's totally new to you and you're overwhelmed by all the newness, I do this when I travel because there's a thin line between the novelty of the new stuff and being overwhelmed by all the change. So by having a schedule, on Monday I'm going to the Tower of London. Tuesday we're going to go to the London Zoo. That's what we did in London a few years ago. My mom and I did that. We had other people with us, but they were sightseeing separately. So we had our schedule, and that made the unknown aspects of the trip more manageable because I knew what was coming. And it's important with any of this planning to remember not to get overly rigid. Remember, you can't control other people. If someone doesn't cooperate with your schedule, or you're going somewhere and the subway breaks down, you'll be familiar with that if you're in Toronto. Technology breaks, so you can't, control every single aspect. So that's where anticipating comes in. I call it anticipating. It's like having a plan for the plan. So you have your schedule, or you've organized in advance, and something might still go wrong. So what's your plan? If something goes wrong, what are you going to do to calm yourself down instead of just freaking out? I would say mindfulness or distraction are my favorites when I need to calm myself down in the moment, if I can't prevent the anxiety with these other techniques. But find what works for you and bear that in mind, that this is what you're going to do if something does go wrong, because you can't anticipate everything. I think that's my rambling done. I thought about 15 minutes. I even went longer than that. Wow. But I think it was worth a deep dive into that subject based on the fact that I know so much about living with anxiety and so many other people suffer with it. So I think it was worth the deep dive into those techniques. Okay, I'll end it with one last example. This is actually, I used a couple different things here. Actually, I got a couple of, okay, I'll end up with a couple of examples of me using these techniques. So I gave you the one with the wireless printer. Another one, this is where I used, I guess, mostly walk away as well. I was Googling lenses. I have a DSLR camera, and it's going to be a while before I can afford lenses, but I decided to look at something just for interest, and I could not believe the number of choices. I was totally overwhelmed, and my anxiety just went, oh my god, this is too hard, you shouldn't have bought a camera, you're going to be a horrible photographer. So I was able to go, okay, Emily, wait, no. You can't even buy this right now, you're just looking. So I bookmarked the page, because the page was useful, it was just a lot of information. And then I went back later. Um, and an example, this is sort of an inverse example of the organizing one. My birthday this year was me with my phone in a group chat, and my parents were in the same house, and everyone else was on a group chat. And my mom asked me at the last possible minute if I could switch to my laptop instead, because the screen is bigger. And I had to tell her no, because I had not done my organizing, my preparing ahead of time. Probably nothing would have gone wrong, but I didn't feel comfortable, and I was ready to go with the phone. So what if I switched to the laptop and something went wrong, and now I'm a big ball of anxiety on my birthday? So it was worth it for me to say, no, I'm not prepared for that. I didn't prepare for that ahead of time. It's a birthday party, not an assignment going to my boss. It's just my mom. It was okay for me to say, no, not worth the risk. Eventually, I hope to have my anxiety so much under control that I won't need to do that kind of thing, because I'll have a technique for when someone does change something at the last minute. And I hope to have all kinds of new stuff like that to share with you. So I think you've heard enough of my rambling. So I'm going to stop, and thank you.